We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
You just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson. Week 11 NFL action. We're previewing all of it. We've got no interviews today, so it's just us.
Yeah.
So we know you're going to stick around for the entire time. Before we get into it, all first-time depositors at Monkey Knife Fight that put at least $20 into their account while using the promo code PFF will receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. And there's no better time than today to get that PFF Edge annual subscription, because you'll get the draft guide, you'll get every guide that we put out there, and you get all the great stuff from PFF Edge. For a year, it's $40 of value for just $20, and you get the opportunity to turn that 20 into even more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest growing fantasy sports sites in the country in Monkey Knife Fight. So go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit your $20, use the promo code PFF, and you receive your free PFF Edge annual 365 days of value subscription. All right, Sam, you're fired up today.
Yeah.
Bring it. Bring the energy on the podcast as we go game by game here.
All right.
Starting with Thursday Night Football, the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. Before we get into it, though, talk about Ireland rugby. Go.
No.
Okay, fine.
Not doing it.
All right, we're going to get you fired up at some point. Arizona at Seattle. This is a nice second week in a row. Really good division battle. A few weeks back, the Cardinals gave the Seahawks their first loss in overtime. Crazy finish. Larry Fitzgerald played the hero because all he did was get the ball to the referee after every completion. And these guys play some good games. And Russell Wilson, for the first time in his career, with sub 55 PFF grades in back-to-back weeks. What do you think is going to happen, or did happen in this game?
Yeah, and this was like the start of the rot. I know his grade was still really good in this game, but this was the first game that Russell Wilson actually made a ton of mistakes, which has been the theme for the last few weeks. And it's become a bigger problem as he's made less big plays to offset those in the last 2 weeks in particular. But this was the game that started confusing him and started causing him some problems. And it's the first one of these teams now that he's going to have faced twice, right? So he actually gets a chance to fix whatever they were throwing at him the first time round. Also, obviously, they get a chance to like throw a whole new different set of things at him and see if they can still keep that train going. But I'm curious to see if like that experience of having done this already, of having played this team once in the past this season, does that get Russell Wilson more acclimatized and more capable of playing MVP caliber, let Russ cook Russell Wilson, or is he lodged into this, mistake-ridden play that he's got at the moment?
Yeah, so I wrote about this a little bit this week in my QB review, and I think, for years we've talked about Russ being, for 13 out of 16 games, elite and outstanding. But there was always 3 games or 4 games or whatever it was where things were just off. And it seemed like he was past that, and he took that next step starting last year. He didn't really have that disastrous game, but the last 2 weeks he has. So I tend to look at it through the same lenses we did a few years back, where he just has a few of these. There's just a few of these games, and they just happen to be back-to-back weeks. It just happened to be against the Bills, and then last week against the Rams. And by the way, again, we'll talk about the Rams in a minute. A really good Rams defense that's making life really challenging for opposing offenses. So I don't see this trend continuing. I expect Russ to bounce back. I think the X's and O's nuances here, that ends overtime interception that he threw was a phantom zero blitz, and they all dropped out, and he threw the ball to Isaiah Simmons. that particular thing, Mina mentioned it last week, has been an issue for him. I think there's some X's and O's stuff in this game that's going to be great to watch.
So that's what I was going to say, is that, yes, it is something that's been an issue in Russell Wilson's career. On the other hand, like, teams are throwing specific schematic wrinkles at him at the moment that are causing him some problems. And messing around with pressure, looks, and those kinds of things. Again, sort of, similar to what they're doing to Lamar Jackson, to Tom Brady, like just causing these guys to pause a beat longer. Just it's not that they can't diagnose what they're looking at. It's just if you change it in front of them, it takes them just a little bit longer, long enough to cause issues up front. And that's, I think, what we're seeing with Seattle. Arizona were capable of doing it once. Are they capable of doing it twice?
Tyler Lockett is questionable but expected to play as of right now. We're recording on Thursday morning. He went off a few weeks ago against the Cardinals. It's a good matchup for him against the big long corners of Patrick Peterson, Dre Kirkpatrick. DK Metcalf did very little other than track down Budda Baker on that interception. That was what he was most known for in that game. With DK coming off of a game where he was pretty much shut down by the Rams and Jalen Ramsey, are we expecting, and Lockett banged up, are we expecting a little force feeding of DK and getting him back involved?
I'm curious to see how much of that happens. Like, how much do they put Patrick Peterson on DK? Because, we've had this run of DK Metcalf beating up on these cornerbacks that are just not capable of physically matching up with him, right? Then he plays Patrick Peterson and Jalen Ramsey, who are both big, strong, fast cornerbacks that can deal with that just sheer physical intensity and strength that he brings, and it's not gone well for him. Do the Cardinals basically track him? Do they stick him one-on-one all game long on DK and say, this is our best matchup, actually? Or, because, early in the game, remember, it was Tyler Lockett getting Patrick Peterson for that first big reception down the side. Patrick Peterson on Lockett is not a good matchup for Peterson.
Not at all.
He struggles with those smaller, shiftier, quicker receivers. But against a guy like DK, weird, because DK is just a physical monster. Like, Peterson actually matches up pretty well.
So real quick on the other side, Jamal Adams he did not play in the first matchup against the Seahawks. He is, we mentioned it on the other, on the review show, they're building their defense around Jamal Adams, for better or for worse. He's blitzing like crazy. They're sending 5 like crazy. Other than rushing the passer, Jamal Adams has not been great. So keep an eye on the Seattle defense. Kyler Murray running like crazy. People talking MVP in part because of a Hail Mary last week, but it's going to be an awesome one. Both teams are 6-3, tied with the Rams for first in the NFC West.
Jamal Adams leads the Seahawks in total pressures, which would be absurd even if it was just the fact that he's a safety. But he's a safety that's missed a bunch of time.
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. There's some issues on the Seattle defense. So do you have a prediction before this game that some people have already seen?
Seattle favorites. Let's say Russ bounces back. Seahawks
I expect him to as well. I think it's a shootout. I think Arizona's offense might have a ton of success against the Seattle defense, but I'll still lean Seattle to win. Should be a good one though for a Thursday night matchup. Let's get into the weekend's games. There are some really good ones. Some of the games of the week. Let's start with Sunday Night Football. Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs are favored by 7.5. Mm-hmm. So Vegas is disrespecting Vegas, right? Yes. It's not just us.
Well done.
Okay, we're not the only ones disrespecting Derek Carr and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Vegas is disrespecting their hometown team. They're at home, 7.5-point underdogs, and they beat the Chiefs already. Therefore, they're going to.
It's interesting, actually, looking at the lines this week. There's a few teams that Vegas, the bookmakers, as opposed to the team.
Yeah, the Raiders aren't setting the lines,
no,
right?
There's a few teams that the bookmakers in Vegas are clearly, they have a stance on that differs from the sort of general perception. And I think this is one of them. The Colts are favored against Green Bay. Like, they're not buying into the Green Bay thing. I don't think they're buying into Pittsburgh either, which is interesting given how much crap we've taken for saying that the Steelers aren't the best team in the NFL. Vegas doesn't really think they are either.
I mean, they're still favored by a lot.
They're favored by 10, but last week Green Bay were favored by 13,
right,
heading into the same game, essentially. So, I mean, it's intriguing. But, yeah, look, the most interesting thing about this game is the Raiders, basically the entire team is in the COVID protocols at the moment. They don't have COVID. They've been close contacts, which means they weren't wearing masks again, which, they've already been fined quite a lot. And so for the answer to that, it feels like that's a lesson that should be brought on board at some point. But
that's the entire
nevertheless, basically the entire defense is shut down for the week. But if they pass the COVID test and in the game they'll play, it's just the Big Ben's thing of they won't have practiced all week and they'll have to roll in there like off a week of not practicing and all that kind of stuff, which against the Kansas City Chiefs coming off a bye doesn't feel like ideal preparation.
Yeah, you would like to practice, I think.
You think?
It's an interesting matchup because the last time, yes, the Raiders won, and the two things that happened was, I think this was the game coming out of it. I looked at Patrick Mahomes' performance and I said that was very Texas Techian.
Yes,
he had his one interception of the season. That was the one. It was against the Raiders. Definitely threw about 3 or 4 that coulda, woulda, shoulda been picked off. So decision making was all over the place. He had over 20 passes outside the pocket, outside of structure. That was the highest we've seen in 3 years.
He just looked uncomfortable. And that's something that doesn't normally happen to Mahomes. The last time I've seen him look that uncomfortable was the Super Bowl, where he looked uncomfortable for 3.5 quarters, and then it clicked.
And we're talking about a Raiders defense that has one of the, before they ran into Drew Lock, one of the worst coverage grades.
Right. They're not good
by our standards.
But they, I think, they're doing the opposite of what the Colts did for a while, which is, look, our talent isn't great. So the Colts' answer to that was to basically run the same thing every play, right? It's like the answer to not being great is to basically run one thing and just make sure we're executing well, right? The Raiders' answer is to go, okay, we're not great, so let's throw everything at you and hope that it's enough to offset. Like, your confusion at what we're throwing at you is enough to offset the fact that we aren't very good. And you saw that, like, Denver was the perfect team for that to happen against, right? Because Drew Lock is young, inexperienced, and doesn't really know what he's looking at most of the time. So when you throw all this crap at him, he's like,
red zone
just
interception,
implodes, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't know, like, it just seizes up. So it's a perfect example because you watch Jerry Jeudy's tape and you see him just wide open all day long against the entire Raiders secondary, but the ball never gets to him because everything that they're throwing at them is confusing Drew Lock to the point where he never finds the wide open Jerry Jeudy. I just have a hard time. I have a hard time seeing that work against Kansas City and the Chiefs, but it already did. You know what I mean? Like, if I hadn't seen that game, I would say there's no way that works because that's basically it's a worse version of what the Ravens do, and the Ravens might have given Patrick Mahomes like the answers to what they were running, right?
Crush them.
Yeah, whereas it did work when the Raiders faced him the first time.
It did. And so that matchup's going to be interesting. I think the Chiefs offense just still has so much more to offer.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the scary thing for the rest of the league as we get to the second half of the season because the Chiefs do have some big games coming up. They're going to play the Bucs and the Saints, and they're going to play do they play Buffalo too? But the Raiders this week. But they have some big games. So they're not, rolling through the Jets and some of these lesser teams that they've played. They've got some big ones. So are they going to open it up and it's going to be more Mahomesian?
Already played Buffalo, remember? Bad weather.
They already played Buffalo. That's right. Sorry. I'm looking at Derek Carr's passing chart from the first game, premium stats 2.0. And we came out of that game saying that was it. Great job. Raiders, Derek Carr, you threw the ball down the field, 219 yards on deep passes, those 20-plus yard passes.
Let's talk about Derek Carr's deep ball for a minute because that got us into trouble, right? Likening him to coming to America. Us. We're a team, Steve.
Not when you screw up.
No, that's exactly how it works. So the coming to America thing was, a bit, but the point was, I think Derek Carr uses the deep ball as more of a tactical gambit every now and again in the course of a game, rather than an honest attempt to play what a defense is showing him. It's like every now and again, I just need to bank the defense off, right, and take a deep shot. And if it's there, it's there, great. If it's there and you hit it, you immediately back the defense off. If it's not there and you take the shot, it's at least the threat that you bank the defense off, and that in and of itself makes them back off. So it kind of works. But I think we've started to see him take a few more of those chances organically in the course of games. But what's really interesting is it feels like he's taking way more deep shots than he ever has before, right? When you look at the numbers, he really isn't. His percentage of deep attempts is ticked up slightly over the past couple of years, but we're talking 9% up to 10%, right, of his attempts. What's really interesting is when you then look, you pull up the grading, the PFF grading on the last few years of those attempts, And this is what I think is a great example of how PFF, what we do in attempting to grade the actual throw, the play the quarterback makes, and try and extrapolate it, try and separate it out from the receivers, from the pass blocking, from all the other elements. It's really hard to do, and there's no way of doing it cleanly. But I think this is great evidence that we do a reasonable job of it, that Carr's grade on those deep attempts in the last 2 years is basically the same, right? It's like 92, I think, in 2019. It's 92 in 2020. So the grades are almost identical, but the results of those plays are dramatically different. He's averaging like 6 yards per attempt more this year than he did a season ago, because suddenly you've got Henry Ruggs. Outside of last week, you had Nelson Aguilar, who'd become a pretty good deep threat as well. You've got, Hunter Renfrow making a couple of really good snags on deep attempts that he's made. So we've essentially, like, Carr's problem was never that he was bad at completing these, or bad at the deep ball. It was that A, he never really attempted them that often, and B, the offense as a whole just wasn't good at completing those plays. This season they have been, and that difference, the threat of that deep pass, transforms how a defense defends the Raiders and makes his life easier on the other stuff, which is why his numbers are so absurdly good, because he's having an easier time of the shorter intermediate passes where he wants to live anyway.
It's a good explanation of stuff there.
Thank you.
With Carr. I'm looking through the numbers, and I think this is really fascinating because the Chiefs, remember a couple years ago when 2018 Mahomes wins the MVP and the Chiefs couldn't stop anybody.
Yes.
And they allowed the most completions beyond the sticks than any defense in the league. Wasn't even close. When Spags took over, Steve Spagnuolo,
It's never going to stop being funny.
defensive coordinator, they've done a great job. Personnel hasn't changed a whole lot. They play a little bit more zone than they did previously, a lot more zone than they did previously, but they do a great job. Just picture Tyrann Mathieu patrolling the middle of the field like he does so well. And they have taken away the intermediate part of the field. By our definition, that's the 10 to 19 yard range. They have given up 19 completions at that range. And that's where quarterbacks make their money, right? And quarterbacks come out of games completing 8, 9, 10 passes at that range. The Chiefs have given up 19, and Carr had 1 in the last matchup. But he did have the 219 yards on the deep stuff. That's almost half of the deep yardage that the Chiefs have given up this year. Almost half of it just on deep passes. So the Chiefs in general, I think it's easy to look at that game and say that's an anomaly for the Chiefs defense. That is not how they play. They got smoked in that one game. They should play better, and the Raiders could really be in trouble. But all that said, you still have to stay aggressive. I think the way to beat the Chiefs is to go for the 200 on the deep balls again, because it's going to be really tough to stop Mahomes again. I think all of the stuff that went right for the Raiders in the first matchup, it's going to be really tough to duplicate it again in the second one.
Yeah, the Chiefs defense, I think, has done the same. It's done what the Raiders defense is trying to do, right? Which is, our talent wasn't great, but the easiest way of helping it out is to confuse an offense, right? And just show them more than one thing. When they were running like man coverage all the time, the personnel wasn't any worse necessarily, but they were too obvious and too telegraphed in what they were playing. I'm really curious to see if the Raiders can make Mahomes as uncomfortable as he was the first time around, because that's like the only way of slowing him down, right? If he's comfortable, game over. Forget about it. He's just going to carve you up. It might take a little bit of time, but it's happening. If you can at least cause him to feel uncomfortable in the pocket, bad things still happen to Mahomes. That's the takeaway from that previous game. Texas Tech Mahomes is still there. Like, you can, the same way that like the negatives in Baker Mayfield's Oklahoma tape, they were really small, but you can find that guy and you can magnify it by what you do in the NFL on defense. The same thing is true with Mahomes. It's a dramatically different, scenario, obviously, but the negative Mahomes, the negative Texas Tech Mahomes still exists, and the Raiders were able to bring that guy to the surface for at least a game.
I think Mahomes is just under a 90 PFF grade. I think we're about to see him unload in the second half of the season here. So I'm expecting the Chiefs unloading on the Raiders in this one. 7.5, I think they cover it. COVID aside, I think the Chiefs make a statement here on Sunday Night Football. And I've never been wrong when I talk about statement games on Sunday Night Football. Never.
Oh.
Bucs Saints 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I know that leaves both of us disrespecting the Raiders again, but it just feels...
No, Vegas started it.
Okay.
Vegas disrespected Vegas.
It feels very hard to imagine that happening to Mahomes twice by the same team in the same season, particularly when they're coming off a bye, having had a chance to study it for like a whole week.
By the way, in PFF terms, Mahomes had, in that game, the highest grade for a quarterback with 4 turnover-worthy plays in a game. So everything else was good. There was 4 pretty bad plays in there for Mahomes, and there was so many out-of-structure plays. But he had the highest grade we've ever given a quarterback with 4 turnover-worthy plays. So he still played pretty well overall.
Reed still has some absurd record coming out of a bye as well, right? Like he's all-time great numbers.
Yeah, look at you dropping bye stuff in there.
I mean, I don't have the data, so it's like a fairly pointless nugget to be throwing at you.
Good work.
I'm pretty sure he has like one of the best records of all time coming out of a bye.
Taking the Chiefs?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Monday Night Football. This is another awesome game. Los Angeles Rams at the Tampa Bay Bucks. And I want to throw another number at you.
Okay.
Because we keep talking about the Rams, and generically, they make life difficult. They're playing too high shells. They're doing some unique stuff on defense. They're allowing a completion percentage of just 16.7% on 20-plus yard passes. That is by far the best in the league. And if you look at the Bucks offense, which just put up 46 points or whatever last week, the Bucks and Tom Brady was throwing the deep ball great through about 8 weeks. He's only got 1 completion of 20-plus yards over the last 2 weeks. It was kind of bound to regress. They still found a way to move the ball last week, but I just think this matchup is incredible because the Rams defense has been awesome. And my takeaway from the Bucks last week, Brady played okay, but he could have thrown for 500 yards because there was deep stuff open, and there was all of their playmakers were there and doing their thing. From Mike Evans to Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Gronk, it's going to be an incredible matchup on Monday Night Football. Bucks offense versus Rams D.
Yeah. This is Ali Marpet needs to play in this game, otherwise Tampa Bay don't win. The end. The last 2 weeks we've seen what happens without Marpet. It's not
Just
about
to like get a hand on Aaron Donald every now and again.
It's not about how good he is, right? Ali Marpet is one of the best guards in the NFL this season. It's about how bad the situation is when he's not there, right? Because the offensive line is about the weakest link in the chain, not the strongest. And when you take him out of it, the offensive line breaks effectively. The chain snaps in half. And it was a disaster when Joe Haig was the guard. They then reshuffled, brought in A.Q. Shipley and moved Jensen to guard, and it was better than Joe Haig, but still bad, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't have to play Aaron Donald when that was happening. Now they have to play Aaron Donald. If Marpet is not playing, like Donald is just coming through that line every single play, and Tom Brady is going to have no prayer in the world. If Marpet plays, they've got a shot. They can stop or at least slow down Aaron Donald and give Tom Brady a platform to work from. Usually I know the data says those individual linemen just don't move the needle in terms of spreads, in terms of like percentage of winning games, but I think this is every now and again the matchup is so bad that I think it does, and this is one of those cases.
Well, yeah, I mean if it's Donald or somebody that can get pressure, and it's interior pressure. You know, we did a study a few years back on where the pressure affects quarterbacks most, and I thought it was awesome that it came out kind of intuitive. This was years ago, but it was Brady and Peyton. And Brady, when the pressure came up the middle, was far worse. And Peyton was worse when the pressure came off the edge. And it's like when you actually think about how they like to move in the pocket, Peyton was a slider. He loved to slide in the pocket. If you stunted, he would feel it and, you know, replace you, and just knew how to maneuver the pocket laterally. Brady likes to step up, right? He moves up, you know, vertically through the pocket. So when you do have any sort of pressure in his face, it is a little bit more detrimental to him. So having I think this was true about Breeze for years too, because of his height and all that stuff. You want to have that wall, the center guard wall in front.
Look at you. You just can't escape the heightest. You and your 6 foot whatever.
It's just the truth.
You're just hating on the little
Brady
people.
and Peyton are 6'4" and 5", and I'm talking about them. Poor Drew. We'll talk about him a little bit later on.
Anti-Drew Brees, anti-Russell Wilson, anti-Kyler Murray's MVP candidacy. You're just heightest is what you are.
I like Baker.
Do you?
Oh, wait. I'm off that bandwagon, too.
Mm-hmm.
You know who I like? Dan McGuire. 6'8", guy got after it. You know, I gotta call out the Good Morning Football guys. They were celebrating their 1,000th show. I congratulated them, and I said, hey, who's been your tallest guest? And Peter Schrager comes back, and he says, Dan McGuire. And I had to go to Pro Football Reference And Pro Baseball Reference, and I looked up the heights, and he's 6'8", and I'm 6'10". Well, I have been a guest on Good Morning Football.
You're listed at 6'10". Maybe they have.
If Peter's going to be official, that's what you use the list height.
The list height.
I'm 6'10". Little Dan McGuire's 6'8". Anyway, let's get to this game here. Brady in the passing attack against this Rams defense. Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams, one of our highest graded corners, making plays left and right.
Dude, Darius Williams, if you include his college tape, basically doesn't have any bad tape yet.
Yeah, UAB.
His grade, so his grade at UAB, his grade and stats at UAB, and what we've seen from him so far in the NFL in varying degrees of playing time, it's all been good. There's no evidence of Darius Williams being anything other than amazing in his football career that we've analyzed, which is kind of impressive for a cornerback. You know, the position that is massively volatile and always swings back. Like the greatest players ever, Rivas had average seasons. Darius Williams hasn't had one yet. Now, it's only 3 years, so, but the guy has yet to put bad tape on display.
Or was it just the guy opposite Jalen Ramsey?
I don't think it's the guy. It's not that the guy opposite Jalen Ramsey becomes good, because we've seen evidence of that not being the case in Jacksonville, right? But it is true to say
AJ Boye had a career year opposite Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, but
that's not what I'm saying. My point is that it's not that anybody opposite him is good immediately, but it's him doing what he does enables an opportunity for a guy who's already pretty good to look really good. So if you have a pretty good corner in AJ Boye or a pretty good corner in Darius Williams or Troy Hill, but who have limitations, suddenly you remove the limitations from the equation because Jalen Ramsey is taking the guy that exposes the limitations, and now you just get a chance to look good. So I think that's what it does. It gives an opportunity for guys that are already good to look really good, but it doesn't make like a crappy corner good because he's still crappy.
So I'm looking at this matchup. Makes sense. I'm looking at this matchup. The Bucs love to throw the ball down the field.
They do.
And for the entire season, we've been saying, is it Bruce Arians' offense? How much is Tom Brady? And I think you've made a pretty good point. Brady is, quote-unquote, checking down more than he has in previous years because that's the nature of the offense. You look deep to short, and then you have a check down. Whereas with the Patriots, he didn't check down as much. He just had shorter passing concepts. This would be a game, if you put a Patriots team up against a Rams-style defense that just doesn't allow deep play, passes beyond 20 and all that stuff, you'd say, okay, that plays into the Patriots' hands. They're gonna move it around up to 20 yards. They're gonna, find the open man in your zone and just take the 10-play drive and go. This would be a game, if Brady was in the New England system, it feels like a good matchup. In the Bucs system, Will they adjust? Will they take the underneath stuff? Is this going to be a high Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, work the underneath stuff type of game? Or do the Bucs still say, no, we need the explosives. We need those big plays, and we're going to force it and force it and force it. And then the problem with that is if it's not there, then you're feeding Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, who are both do like 2 drops per game and do very little after the catch. If this is a game where Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones are combining for like 13 catches or something like that, they're in trouble. If they adjust their offense and it's like, hey, Chris Godwin, you're going to be lined up on linebackers. Antonio Brown, you're going to be on linebackers and safeties underneath. Pepper those guys with targets. I think the Bucs have a better shot doing that.
The Bucs this season feel like they're being given an opportunity to accelerate like a sort of team building exercise that usually takes a few years into one season because of the teams that they're facing, right? So there was going to be this mashup between the Tom Brady experience of 20 years in New England and Bruce Arians and the relatively unique offense that he likes to run. That was always going to take some time to figure out where the meeting point between those two things was. And it's being shown sort of sequentially along the line where the problems are, right? So the Saints immediately expose like multiple problems, right? Now you get a chance to fix those. The Rams, I think, are going to expose the same kind of problem on one side of the ball, but basically immediately highlight an area that needs to be fixed, right? Now, do they learn from that? Do they take that as the lesson it should be and like, okay, we fix this here, we fix this here. By the time we hit the playoffs, we're like a complete, well-rounded team that doesn't have these flaws anymore. And we beat all the best teams in the NFL. We win the ring. Everybody gets to retire, go home happy. Or do they like just not learn the lesson and like these are the steps along the road that derailed this Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl train? Because those are basically your options. They didn't yet learn from the Saints thing. Haven't seen evidence that they've learned the lesson from that yet. I think they've started to develop more of those intermediate plays, but it's not done. This will be another test. Like, it's an opportunity for them to become a Super Bowl team. On the other hand, it's also a hurdle that could trip them up and leave them like dead in the middle of the race.
Yeah, I think the Bucs offense ends up somewhere in between the last 2 weeks, where it was a train wreck on Sunday night against the Saints, and last week scored 46, easily probably could have been 60 with the way all those playmakers were getting open all over the place. So other side of the ball, Jared Goff played a much cleaner game last week. The Rams, I think they've had to protect him this year. When he's been protected, Goff, he's taken care of the ball, hasn't missed a ton of throws, and I'm talking protected by play action in the screen game. I mean, you're going up against Seattle last week. There were holes all over that defense. Window's going to be a little bit tighter this week. A lot of this is going to depend on how the Rams are able to move the ball against Bulls defense, and Jared Goff taking care of the football better than he did the previous few weeks before the Seattle game.
Nice game for the Rams to get started with the post-Whitworth life.
Yeah, good luck.
Right.
Yeah, the Bucs are so speedy laterally. They're the team you like to run downhill. If you're going to run downhill versus the outside zone, the lateral, Devin White, Levante David using their speed. So I don't think it's a great matchup for the Rams offense either. I think we might see like a 20-17 type
defensive
of game.
battle?
A defensive battle on Monday Night Football. We'll see.
People are going to hate that.
The Bucs offense versus the Rams defense, though, I think is going to be must-see TV. Where are you leaning in this one? Bucs are favored by 4, by the way, at home. So take the cross-country travel. That's a huge factor.
I like the Rams to cover that, but I think the Bucs sneak out a win.
Okay. I'll take the Bucs to win and cover. I don't love the matchup on paper, but I think they find a way. But I think they cover more because the Rams offense. Yeah, not being able to do much against the Bucs.
Again, because we haven't seen the Bucs really having learned the lesson from that Saints games, I think they're going to struggle again. Particularly, I think Marpet is huge. Like, that changes the outcome for me. If Marpet doesn't play, I think the Rams win outright.
Really?
Yeah.
Outright. It's all about Ali Marpet's the only guy on the injury report here as of Thursday. Yeah. Or as of Wednesday.
And he's questionable, but it was a concussion, right? And he's already been out a week. He should play, right?
There's 2 other potential games of the week, but this one's great. Tennessee Titans at the Baltimore Ravens. And it's another example, just like the Kansas City-Vegas line, right? It's easy for fans to say, well, the Raiders already beat the Chiefs. How could it be a 7.5-point spread? The last time we saw Tennessee and Baltimore, Tennessee had their statement game. Divisional round last year, the Titans run away from the number 1 seed Ravens. But here in 2020, the Ravens coming off a loss. Both teams coming off a loss, but the Ravens are favored by 6 at home this time around. So Vegas is not buying into this. These teams are equal. They're essentially saying Ravens are better by 3 or 4 points, depending on how much you're weighing home field here in 2020.
Honestly, even if you ran back that divisional game the next week, I think the line would favor Baltimore. Like, the freaky things happened in that game. The Titans got ahead, and then that put the Ravens into that thing of they can't play from behind. And
the freakiest thing that happened was Derrick Henry owning Earl Thomas with a stiff arm for a 60-yard run. That was the freakiest thing.
Using him as his lead blocker.
Yes. Yeah. That was the freak.
It was
freaky.
But that game put Baltimore in a hole early that changed the entire outcome of what was going to happen, right? And the Ravens are susceptible to that in a way a lot of teams are not, it's definitely a thing. But if you reset, right? All right, do over, let's rewind, let's reset history, let's start over. You got to assume that most of the time that doesn't happen, at which point most of the time the Ravens win.
I think a big part of this spread, I'm looking at PFF pass blocking grades, PSV too, all part of PFF Elite. You sort by pass block grade, you go look at the bottom 8. Of the bottom 8 teams in pass blocking grade, the only team with a winning record is the Tennessee Titans. They have the 4th worst pass blocking grade. And I think a big part of this is Taylor Lewan getting injured and just the tackle situation with the Titans. I mean, across the board, it just hasn't been great from a pass block situation, pass blocking standpoint. The last 2 weeks, however, against the Bears and the Colts, pass blocking grades in the 30s as a team. And when we talk about last year, Ryan Tannehill and having this career year and all that stuff and why regression was inevitable, part of it is just because the situation last year was so good. They ran play action a lot. The play action results were incredible. Tannehill had guys to throw to. They schemed it up well. A lot of things happened. But Tannehill's never been the guy that's going to overcome a poor situation. And if the poor situation is up front and your O-line is not crept back toward average and it's in the bottom of the barrel, it's really tough for a Ryan Tannehill caliber quarterback to overcome that. And that's what we've seen in the last few weeks here.
Did you read young Michael Renner's article about Lamar Jackson being figured out?
Yeah.
On PFF.com.
Yeah, that was really good.
It was.
Good job.
And it's an interesting piece, and it sort of essentially outlines, what teams have started to do schematically to cause this Baltimore Ravens offense problems, in addition to the problems that they're manufacturing for themselves in terms of, personnel being missing on the offensive line, in terms of Lamar not playing as well as he's played in the past, and in terms of becoming predictable enough that teams are calling out what they're doing. You know what I mean? So what it suggests essentially is teams have reverted back to that old Chargers, the very first time Lamar got found out in inverted commas.
2018, the wild card round.
Yes.
The Chargers beat the Ravens.
And the Chargers rolled out there basically without any linebackers on the field. Just deployed a whole shitload of safeties and said, we're going to match up with speed.
It's a college defense.
Yeah. We're going to match up with your speed with speed, and we're going to take away all the things you do. And it confused them. They hadn't accounted for the idea that you might be able to get to the edge in the same way that they can with your speed, and suddenly we got to actually make guys miss in the open field, and it wasn't as effective. And then they developed counters of that, and they were able to have a much more effective power game. But because of all those other things, teams have started to go back towards that. The Titans are an interesting defense for that to happen too, or to take that lesson and try and attack it, because they've got some pretty good speed on that defense. They also just upgraded at nickel with Desmond King coming in. Like, that gives them more of an incentive to play nickel. They're in the middle of the pack in terms of percentage of base defense being used so far this season. Again, kind of a little bit below average in terms of nickel, but they now have a personnel to sort of go that way and try and attack Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think just the cat and mouse game between Ravens offense every single week now and what defenses are doing. We talked about this coming in. You compared it to Sean McVay in the past, where it's like, okay, you have this offense. It has been good. It's been good against certain looks. You have to adjust to the other looks, right?
But they're almost being forced to change now because of injuries. Like, they shipped off one of the tight ends, Hayden Hurst, before the season, which kind of changed. Like, they ran a lot of 3 tight end formations last year, which is super rare in the NFL. Baltimore did it quite a lot. Obviously decided themselves they were going to change that by moving out one of the tight ends. Now you've got another one injured. Like, you have to pivot, right? You have to actually change the personnel structures that you're playing with on offense, which changes what you're going to be running.
And the value of having those 3 tight ends last year, and sometimes they're moving into the backfield, or you've got 3 tight ends plus a fullback plus a Lamar, and then you have a little bit of motion off of it. You're gonna find an extra gap. The run game is about math, right? There's 8 gaps to defend, and you have 8 defenders to defend it, whatever it might be, right? Whatever the numbers are, the defense has to match up. And the Ravens did a great job of making sure that you either didn't match up, or we're just going to run power football, and we have a Nick Boyle, who is a great run blocker, plus our great offensive line, plus Lamar making you wrong. All that adds up to, like, all right, they're tough to stop from on the ground. But going back to Renner for a minute, because he followed up on social media, PFF_Mike, and he said, well, what would I do? And I agree with what he said, which was, okay, if you don't have all those tight ends, let's spread. Let's spread to run instead of condensing the formation like the Ravens have done so much.
Do you think Lamar is accurate enough to do that, though?
Well, no, because you're spreading to run as well, and it's the same concepts. You're running the same concepts, just from spread formations rather than condensed 2 and 3 tight end with fullback formations.
His suggestion was that they're not good enough to win the way they want to win right now, so you need chunk plays, which means pivoting to speedsters and trying to get big pass plays.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's a massive change in like run pass splits or run concepts or anything. It's just, all right, Devin Duvernay is that slot, put him in space type of guy. Marquise Brown is still the take the shots down the field type of guy. Willie Snead might see a few more targets for you. There you go, your buddy. But it's honestly, it's the same offense. You're spreading, and all you're doing is taking an 8 and 9 man box and making it a 6 and 7 man box, and you're still playing math. You're still playing with a spreadsheet on the is 7 more than 6? Yes. Okay, pass. Right? I mean, that's all it is. So I think spread to run, spread to pass can work for the Ravens, but they just have to pivot a little bit. But I also think when we get into all the offseason fun, we're going to be sitting here in the offseason saying, you know what would make Lamar's life easier now? Is more guys to throw to, is more playmakers.
They're in a real tough spot, the Ravens, now, because a lot of things need to change for multiple different reasons on this offense, and I don't know if they're capable of it.
Well, you predicted before the season that the Ravens defense was going to be 2000 Ravens-ish.
Yeah.
I'm not calling you out on it. All I'm saying is you predicted them to be really good.
Yeah.
They've given up. I know some teams have had buys, some teams haven't, whatever. They've given up the fewest points in the league overall, the Ravens as a team. I know it's a team stat, but it's mostly defense, right? So they are good. Is this defense good enough to carry an offense that is not bad, but is certainly not as dominant as it was in previous years?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
The
it.
end. Yes.
Good stuff. Are they laughing at us in there?
Probably, yeah.
Who do you like in this game?
God, I think the Ravens are a better team, so I think they probably win, but favored by 6 feels optimistic given the struggles we've seen from them. So Baltimore to win, Tennessee to cover.
I think I'm not going to call upsets again when I look stupid. As long as we don't tweet this out and 100,000 people see it.
The Bengals are going to beat the Steelers outright.
Tennessee's going to win this game.
Okay. Right.
Tennessee's going to win this game.
Yeah.
And cover. How about that? I like the Titans. Tannehill magic. It's coming back. A.J. Brown's not going to drop the deep ball like he did last week and screw all the fantasy owners over. Green Bay Packers at the Indianapolis Colts. You mentioned this earlier. The Colts are favored by 1.5.
Yeah.
The odds makers are buying into the Colts defense here. The defense has been pretty good.
Right, which has maintained a pretty high level of play despite playing better teams. Like early in the season, the numbers were absurd. They were off the charts. They were like best defense in the NFL by a mile because they'd faced some pretty bad defenses. The question was, well, what happens when they actually face some better defenses? Are they still able to look good, or was this just a complete figment of everyone's imagination or a product of facing bad teams? They're still pretty legit. Like they're good up front.
If I was setting lines for this game, I feel like Phillip Rivers playing in Indianapolis versus playing in Green Bay is worth like 7 points. Right? If this game's in Green Bay, I'm like Packers by a touchdown because I don't trust Green Bay. If the wind's above 7 miles an hour, what's he going to do? Right? In Green Bay, if there's a snowflake falling from the sky, Rivers is done. But in the dome, he can sling it a little bit. He'll be okay. Is that unfair? I'm being a little facetious, but
Yeah, it's probably accurate.
I mean, Green Bay's defense is still a massive question mark. I also think there's an element to their offense where Rodgers is playing at such a high level that is 6 years removed from him playing at this high level.
Yeah.
Especially if you take out that Bucs game. You can't take it out, but it's like he's really just had one bad game.
Yeah.
And everything else has been either outstanding or at least good. Last week he was good. He was fine. Can he even keep up that level of play? It really is so far outside of his recent baseline of play, Aaron Rodgers here. Our highest graded quarterback, above 93. Haven't seen this level of play from him since a stretch of 2016, but for a season, it hasn't been since 2014. Is that just an inevitable regression? Or is it also an inevitable regression with Devontae Adams as well?
No.
I mean, Adams maybe not. I mean, he's just playing outstanding right now.
No with Adams. Like, Adams has been the best route runner in the NFL for a couple of years now, or at least one of them. Like this season, he's added everything else, or was already adding everything else, and now it's all together, right? He's the complete receiver. Why would it disappear, right? There's no flaw to his game as long as the ball keeps going in his direction, and I don't see that slowing down. He's going to be dominant. As for Rodgers, even if you go back, like that 2014 season, he ended up with a PFF grade of 93.4, including the playoffs. Even that season featured a couple of bum games, right? Week 15 against Buffalo was a grade of 56.8. Week 12 against the Vikings, overall grade was okay, but the passing grade was 60.8. Those are sort of orange grades of a little bit below average. Everything else was pretty absurd. But like my point is, even in crazy, insane, amazing, best kind of seasons we've ever seen, caliber years, you get the odd stinker. Now, the game he had against Tampa Bay was worse than either of those, but everything else has been of that level or better. So Maybe. I mean, I don't see why he can't continue this. Like, what is the thing that would prevent Rodgers maintaining this level? Like, why would he just come back down to earth randomly?
I still come down to the supporting cast just a little bit.
Well, yeah, and that's Alan Lazard comes back in theory. Like, he was a limited practice on Wednesday.
He's been outstanding when he's been on the field, and
he changes. He not only has he been good, but I think he changes everything. Right? He's the guy. He's the other guy that Rodgers can trust, which means he can go to him. Which means Marquez Valdez-Scantling can become just the sort of designated big hitter that occasionally is going to break one. I think they're so much better when Lazard is on the field because of that extra layer of comfort that Rodgers has in him.
I like to think that you and I bounce back and forth between spreadsheets and the on the field stuff in the film, right? Going into 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, Russell Wilson had a 95 passing grade. Was there anything on film that suggested he's going to have bad games? Other than if you just, from a film standpoint, everything was outstanding. He was looking great other than a few throws here and there. From a spreadsheet standpoint, you would say a 95 grade is just tough to maintain, right? It's just really tough. He's never done it before in his career. Regression is inevitable. And now he's regressed, and he's a high 80s quarterback, and he's probably going to go back the other way, and he's going to end the season around 90. I mean, that's just probably what's going to happen with Russell Wilson, right? Could we just look at Rodgers and say there's nothing on the field? Like, his accuracy's been good. Decision-making's fine. I threw a pick last week against the Jags, but he hasn't been an issue. He's just going to regress a little bit because 93 is tough to maintain. He's probably going to land around 91 or whatever it is.
I think so. With Russell Wilson, I think there was. This season I've been all about the blueprints. I hate that as a concept, but
fundamentally,
I seem to keep coming back to it.
Fundamentally, there are blueprints.
Against Arizona, I think there were signs that you could cause Russell Wilson some problems that no one else had discovered before the season, or before in this season. With Rodgers, there is evidence in that Tampa Bay game that you can cause him problems with the right blitzes. Actually, passer rating is not a great statistic, right? Or at least it's not great at what it's supposed to measure, which is the quarterback's performance. It's actually pretty good at identifying a sort of overall passing efficiency for a team, right? Look at Rodgers' passer ratings this season. Every single game is above 107.6, except the Bucs game, which is 35. So it's a drop of like 75 passer rating points in that one game alone because they caused him no end of problems. It's not that, there was a lot of things that came together. Great quarterbacks that grade above 90 don't turn into a 45 graded quarterback off one thing, right? They turn into a 45 graded quarterback when a lot of things go wrong. See Tom Brady in the New Orleans game, right? One thing didn't cause that. A lot of things did.
Right.
So the Bucs blitzed the ever-living crap out of Aaron Rodgers in that game. Also, in addition to that, like Ndamukong Suh was messing with his head as well. Like, he was pissing him off. Things started to go wrong. Rodgers got in his own head. Like, everything started to go wrong. Like the quicksand line, right? You seen the replacements? Keanu Reeves, Shane Falco, Footsteps Falco from Ohio State. Where he starts talking about quicksand, right? You just start sinking. The harder you struggle, the deeper you sink. That's what happened to Rodgers against Tampa Bay. That's what happened to Tom Brady against New Orleans. So there is tape to show what to do against Rodgers, but most of the time 5 things don't go wrong when that happens, right? And he's able to overcome it. So, and it's a really high aggressive, like low percentage shot to do it, right? The way to attack Rodgers on tape so far this season is to hang your coverage out to dry and hope you get home with the pressure. That's a risky thing to expect the team to do.
But aren't the Colts, as more of a zone heavy team, that they have the ability to frustrate the other way, which is when you play a brand of football similar to like the Rams, where you just don't give up a whole lot of stuff over the top. Can they frustrate? Can they take Devontae Adams away through zone concepts? And then it becomes Rodgers relying on everybody else. And through the years, it's like, well, can we get some Marquez Valdez-Scantling? Can we get some hot takes here that we can throw on social media? Sometimes he doesn't run the right route. He's a little bit off. When Rodgers has to rely on those other guys and they need to be in the right spot to defeat these zone concepts, I think you could frustrate him that way as well. And I think the Colts have a shot to do that. I don't think they're going to do it enough. And I think the Packers as an underdog in the dome where Rodgers can zip it around, I like the Packers in this one, but I think it'll be a fun matchup. Some pretty good games this week.
I just don't know how easy it is to take away a guy as good as Davante Adams with zone concepts, right?
I know we're speaking in such generalities.
There are always holes in zones, and unless you're literally clamping down on him with like multiple players every single snap, which is doable, but that's so concerted to take away one guy, you're massively opening up other places.
You feed a guy if he's in man coverage, right? You look at Davante, it's like man coverage, he has a mismatch, he's going to be like, I'm going to feed him. When it's zone, you have to trust your reads, and you have to go 1 to 2 to 3, and it's like, all right, we have a concept that's supposed to get Davante Adams open against single high, and they ran too high, and so it's not him, right? So you can't feed him if you have zone concepts, and the Colts do a pretty good job of disguising.
Right, but he's also going to be open he's also a good receiver at knowing where the soft spot in a zone is. So as long as he's early in the progression, which he should be, and you've called the right play to attack the zone defense you're seeing, like as long as the basic structures of your offense on that play actually function against zone, which if you're seeing a ton of zone in the game, they should, he's still going to get a ton of targets.
All right, there's one other element to this. The Colts do a pretty good job. They actually, if you look at their defensive coverage breakdown, it's quite wide open. They do everything. Aaron Rodgers, one of my favorite pieces of PFF data through the years has been when you disguise coverage against him, just rotate safeties, he goes from like QB1 to about 15 from a grading standpoint. The Colts are one of those teams because they do so many different things, could be a team to run a little bit more disguise and execute it and slow him down a little bit. Okay. So keep an eye on it. Who do you like in this one? Which Rivers game do you get?
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
It's
right?
really a big part of this. Green Bay are still missing a lot in the secondary. I'm gonna side with Vegas here, the bookmakers.
The Colts?
Yes.
Really?
Colts to win and cover.
I'll take the other way. Packers to win and cover the 1.5.
All right.
That's crazy.
Fine.
It's a trap, isn't it? It's a trap that everybody's going to jump on Green Bay here.
Yeah, probably.
All right, let's get through the rest of the slate here. Philadelphia Eagles at the Cleveland Browns. It's a trench matchup. This is going to be the Browns' take every single week because they've got the highest pass blocking grade in the league by a mile, and they've got the number 2 run blocking grade in the league. They have the great Wyatt Teller at right guard, came back and had a monster game last week from a run game perspective. Browns in the trenches against the Eagles. It's the number 1 pass blocking grade against the number 1 pass rushing grade. Something's got to give.
Yeah. The Eagles still suck, which is a problem. Everyone keeps thinking they're going to get good, they're going to get healthy, they're going to be the team that emerges from the NFC East and put some distance between them and everyone else. I mean, it's not happening. No, they're just bad. They're not good. And now they're facing a team in Cleveland who they're not bad. At the very minimum. This is also
takes here, Sam.
One of the most underwhelming quarterback battles. Like, you've got Carson Wentz just heaving the ball to the opposition with absurd regularity. He leads the NFL by like 10 turnover-worthy plays, and yet he's also like 3rd in throwaways. It's not like he's been,
he might lead in turnover-worthy throws if he doesn't even have one the rest of the year.
Yeah,
he'll be top 3 if he doesn't have one from now until week 17. He'll be top 3 in turnover-worthy plays.
But everybody assumes because he's got so many of these ridiculous turnovers that he's not like the thing. I mean, I've sort of essentially said this the last couple of weeks that he doesn't know when to cut bait on a play and get rid of it. He does. He's actually getting rid of the ball a lot in terms of throwaways, and yet he's still leading the league by a freaking mile in turnover-worthy plays. He's just playing terribly. And Baker Mayfield has yet to have a game graded above 75 all season long, despite the situation around him being pretty good. This is ugly.
Yeah. How's that? I just said, yeah, back to you after you did that to me earlier.
Yeah, you see how I didn't care?
Oh, yeah, you didn't.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. Screwed it up.
Yeah.
You think it's a beatdown for the Browns? I'm going to believe.
What?
You think it's not close, this game?
I think the Browns win this fairly comfortably.
Man, I'm going to believe in the Eagles every single week.
Right.
They're going to let me down.
Based off no evidence.
Based off of previous year's evidence that I still haven't
Yeah,
come
exactly.
off of.
Previous takes that you're not leaving yet. The Eagles are bad right
They still
now.
have a good
Really
defensive
bad.
front. I need Brandon Graham. I need Baker to just do a little.
Right. They have a pretty good defensive front. It's not as good as it was in years past. And now they're going up against the Browns, who have one of the best offensive lines in the game.
Brandon Graham has only 7 sacks. We have 7 sacks, and we've got a few more games to go here.
That's right.
I need Baker to just roll into him a couple times.
It's possible. Very
Right.
possible.
So Brandon, if you're listening, listen. The Browns run a lot of boot action. Okay, just play the quarterback on boot action. Don't play the run. So Baker's going to roll left like at least twice per game. You're going to be on the right side. Just go right for Baker. Who cares if you open up a little running lane?
Last week was a big missed opportunity for you. Giants again.
Oh, I know. Daniel Jones holding the ball for 10 seconds and all that.
Andrew Thomas, like nothing.
I know.
Andrew Thomas on the right side. You should have got another one out of that.
Anyway, watch the trench battle here. J.C. Treader at center, Jack Conklin and Wyatt Teller on the right side were dominant last week. I like the Browns to win. I think it's close though.
If Baker comes out of this season having not had a single game graded above 75, but hasn't imploded, what the hell do they do?
I don't know. Because he's a starting caliber quarterback.
Yeah.
And you've got a million of those. It's unexciting. He would have had an above average season, a disappointing season, and then a mediocre season where they had success. That's what his career would be at the end of this. But the last 2 years, far more concerning than, after the optimism of his rookie season. So I like Cleveland to win. I think it's close though. Eagles, they're gonna hang tough.
I mean, I think they'll win. It won't be that close.
Okay. New England Patriots at the Houston Texans. Houston, 2-point underdog at home against the Patriots. Are the Patriots on the upswing enough and the Texans just bad enough? I mean, the mismatch here is the New England run game against Houston, they were the team that got wrecked by Cleveland last week from a run game perspective. They had, they're both defensive tackles. I just said P.J. Hall, right? Because I almost went B.J. Hill because we always screw them up. P.J. Hall and Brandon Dunn with like grades in the 30s from a run defense standpoint. They got wrecked up front. Everything on paper says New England, this should be one of those games where New England's just cranking out 12 to 14 play drives in the run game. But I think Deshaun Watson's going to have to be a hero here to pull it out for the Texans.
Which is basically there every week. Like, they go as far. I mean, they're a one-man band at this point. They're Deshaun Watson, a group of receivers that are capable but not great. Like, it needs Deshaun Watson to make that happen. They're a group of receivers that can take advantage of Deshaun Watson being Superman, but nothing beyond that, right? So their defense is lousy. Like, their best player by a mile is J.J. Watt, and J.J. Watt isn't this season what J.J. Watt usually is.
He's having his worst season in a while.
He's pretty good this year, which is a massive step down from like one of the best defenders in the NFL. So they are not good at all. And we've seen that. Look, their schedule is tough. It's rough. They're probably not as bad as their record shows. On the other hand, on the other hand, they're not much better than it. Like they're getting screwed a little bit by the fact that they are playing a lot of good teams consecutively, but they're bad.
We've been saying that for 10 weeks. At some point, they should have snuck a few. But
also, like, it doesn't matter, right? Like they are better than the wretched record they've had, but the schedule isn't changing, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's irrelevant. They're a tough out in terms of a crappy team, but they're still a crappy team. And, the more interesting thing is, like, how good can this New England team be? Because we're riding this idea they just knocked off Baltimore. It was a surprise. They're sort of technically back in the race, threatening Miami. They're not out of sight yet with Buffalo. But they're only just like a week removed from crawling past the New York Jets. Like, the Patriots aren't very good either.
Where the Jets were actively trying to, like, let's just throw 12 men on the field here for this field goal attempt.
Yeah, or Joe Flacco, like, let's pass up the easy conversion and heave it into triple coverage deep downfield.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question on how good the Patriots are.
And the win was in, like, driving rain in Foxborough, where, like, only they're capable of playing in it.
What about, do you buy into the historic, well, Bill Belichick waits till Thanksgiving, and that's when he turns it on? I mean, we use that take every year, even though they have December losses every. I mean, it's not like built-in data or anything like that. But does he know his team now?
It's bullshit, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you don't buy into it?
No.
Okay, good.
I mean, even if it was true, it's different this year because you're not as good, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to be like, more or less where everybody is and then have a clean December and gap yourself to the number 2 overall seed or whatever. It's another thing to be like under 500 by a mile, 3rd in your division, losing touch, and then we're like, all right, now we can turn it on, I guess.
Yeah.
And get yourself back to what? 8-8, 9-7?
I mean, it's what they felt like coming into the year. An 8-8, 9-7 type of team. For that to happen, they can get back to 500 in this one. Jacoby Myers, quietly the number 3 graded receiver in the NFL, dominant the last couple weeks. I think this game comes down to Deshaun Watson, though. He hasn't had one of those bad games yet. He has the lowest percentage of turnover-worthy plays in the league among quarterbacks, which is incredible because Watson's never been great at taking care of the ball, and they've been playing from behind all the time, and that's usually when you have to start taking some chances. Maybe he should be taking more chances, but absolutely incredible that he's doing that. He has not had that disastrous game yet. I think this goes one of 2 ways. It's either hero Deshaun Watson dragging the Texans to victory, or this is when he has the bad game against Belichick, against this defense, against it's still a pretty good secondary. I'm leaning Houston, though. I think they're going to pull it off, and it's Watson hero game.
I could see that. I don't think that that's crazy. You're right. If it's going to happen, this is the game where bad Deshaun Watson is going to show up. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I think a lot of that, this take heading into the year of, look, he might become a better quarterback without DeAndre Hopkins there. I think that's kind of being borne out at the moment. He is playing better than he's ever played before. Now, that changes with one bad game. Like, that's kind of been the story of his previous seasons, is he's played at this incredible level for 80% of the time, and then he has 3 games that get graded in the 40s, and that torpedoes his grade 5 points.
Right.
That would happen. Like, immediately, if he has one of those games graded in the 40s or the 30s, his grade drops 5 points, and we're talking about the same old Deshaun Watson. So it's a little bit, tenuous to try and make the case. But so far, I think you can see from his tape that he is playing the game in a slightly different way and doing it better. But it's so tough when week upon week he doesn't really have the help around him.
So who wins?
I'm
taking Houston. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I don't feel good about it.
Go
I'm doing it.
New England, but I don't like that either.
All right. Pittsburgh at Jacksonville. We have Ohio State playing at noon on Saturday against Indiana. Did you know about Michael Penix tearing it up for Indiana?
Did I know about it?
Yeah. Did you see the play when Penix extended for the goal line? It's Penix. It's not Penix. It's Penix, I think.
You think?
Extended for the goal line. Well, because it has to be. Right? It has to be. He's the Indiana quarterback, by the way. I think it was the closest play in football history. He dives for the pylon in overtime, barely touches the pylon before it hits out of bounds. They win in overtime against Penn State. Indiana's number 9 in the nation at Ohio State. This is going to be a challenge for Justin Fields' future Jacksonville Jaguar.
I think his name is pronounced this way because it has to be, doesn't it?
It has to be.
Yeah. There are certainly names out there that you do wonder why. Well, you wonder how it ever became a thing in the first place. Like, where along the line of, like, family nomenclature did that become a thing?
Why didn't the former Chiefs fullback by the last name of Cox go by Michael?
Right.
And like, sometimes you're just playing the game too much the other way.
And the second thing is, like, surely you change it. All right, you wake up one day and
that's why you changed it to Penix.
You got stuck with this.
It's Penix.
No, but like change the name completely.
Austin, can we get pronunciation police over here? Is it Penix?
Go down to like Deed Poll or whatever the equivalent is over here and just become Baker.
You can do it over the loudspeaker too. We love
Michael Baker or Michael Robertson.
You're gonna change your last name?
Just go pick one.
No, it's Penix. Anyway, it's gonna be a great game, Jags fans, and your game against Pittsburgh, probably not so much. 10-point favorites, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I called an upset last week. It didn't work.
No.
Not calling it this week.
Okay.
I mean, I felt like all of the Jags upset juice was used last week for the first 3 quarters against the Packers, and then they ran out.
So Steelers fans are really interested in why we hate them.
Okay.
Why do you hate them?
I don't. We don't.
You clearly do. Do you think they're the best team in the NFL?
No.
Why do you hate the Steelers?
Because they have not played like the best team in the NFL.
They're 9-0, Steve.
The best team in the NFL is not determined by wins and losses. It's determined by how you play the game and how you will play the game going forward. And I trust a team like the Kansas City Chiefs to play better football going forward than I trust the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The game's not played on spreadsheets, nerd. All I know is the record says 9-0. They're undefeated.
Were they your best team in the NFL?
God, no.
The Sam's power rankings?
They're not, no.
Now, look, I predicted a few weeks ago they're going to be 10-0. I mean, I said they could be 10-0 going into this Ravens game Thursday night on Thanksgiving next week. They should be after they get by the Jaguars.
Yes.
I mean, they're 2 weeks removed from barely beating Garrett Gilbert and the Cowboys. Let's be serious here. That matters.
Well, also
in team evaluation.
Everybody's like, we just, Ben Roethlisberger with his 4-touchdown perfect game against Cincinnati. It's like, it was the Cincinnati Bengals with one healthy cornerback. Of course you beat the crap out of them. Now, okay, Steve said they'd win outright. That was stupid. But like, if your offense couldn't put up points against that defense, what the hell are you doing? Baker Mayfield threw 7 touchdowns in 2 games against the Cincinnati Bengals. We've just been talking about how Baker's bad. Right now, he's not good. And he scored 7 touchdowns in 2 games against the Bengals.
I will say,
of course you put up points.
The Big Ben MVP discussion, I think, is absurd because you can't just look at the team record and give it to him. And with Big Ben, he's played well. He's been fine. He's played more of a game manager role, which is okay. I would say if you're a Steelers fan and you want to look on the positive end, the fact that Big Ben has played, I say this every week, right? He's played a game manager type of role. However, I think he's more than capable of getting the ball down the field and going, like, if they have to win a shootout against the Chiefs, I wouldn't be surprised if Big Ben performed well in that environment. So he just hasn't had to this point. And if you don't have to, it means everything around you is really good, which means you're not the most valuable player in the NFL.
I pointed people to this page before, but on PFF Green Line, there's a power ratings tab, which is essentially how many points is that team better than the next team on a neutral field, right? But if you scroll to the right, there's a quarterback column, which effectively tells you how many points the line moves if the starting quarterback is not in the game, right? If he gets injured, if he's not going to play, somehow he's out, how much does the line move if that guy disappears, right? Mahomes, the most valuable quarterback, the best quarterback in the NFL, the line moves 9.5 points if Mahomes isn't there, right? That's the most in the NFL. Russell Wilson, 8.5. Aaron Rodgers, 8. Ben Roethlisberger, 4.5. So that
has nothing to do with their backup, or it's just them?
I believe that's just them in a vacuum.
Okay.
My point is, though, that's middle of the pack, right? That's the same as Jared Goff, as Phillip Rivers, as Cam Newton. It's behind Josh Allen, Ryan Tannehill. It's behind Kirk Cousins. The point is, Roethlisberger, the numbers are great, right? But you have to look at how they're being compiled. And he's at the helm of this great offense with great receivers,
in the league,
with a ton of yards after the catch. Now, you can make a fair point that he's situationally better than his overall mean, than his overall average, right? His third down numbers are actually pretty good. Like he's graded in the top 5, I want to say, on third down. I haven't checked recently, but third down, he's actually been impressive. And that is important, right? Clutch, the right time. It's also noisy as hell, right? Those things fluctuate.
Yep.
But let's assume it's all him, right? This is a Hall of Famer we're talking about with multiple Super Bowls.
He does.
This is a guy who's been there and done that. Therefore, let's give him the credit for the third down stuff. Even with that, he still isn't where Mahomes, Russell Wilson are. Like, these are the best quarterbacks in the NFL this season, and he isn't. Now, he's still valuable, and he takes them from being like a 500 team with Duck and Rudolph there.
That's the point I wanted to make.
He takes them from 500 to somewhere between undefeated at 16-0 and let's say the worst they do is 13 wins, right? So somewhere between 13 and 16 wins versus 8 is the difference between Duck and Ben Roethlisberger. But the difference between Roethlisberger and Patrick Mahomes may well be the difference between Pittsburgh winning and Kansas City winning.
Yeah, and if Pittsburgh does somehow pull off 16-0, I think that'll be a challenge.
They have a shot at it.
Big Ben, I still wouldn't put as MVP because, I mean, you can't even compare it to, say, like the Patriots 16-0 when Brady had a legendary season, one of the best seasons of all time. Big Ben could go on a run here, and it's still not going to be one of the best seasons of all time, or still not probably the best season this year.
Brady's defense wasn't setting a record pressure rate that year.
Right. The
which
Steelers have been insane defensively. The point I want to make, those Steelers fans have brought up, well, look how much better they are than with Duck and Mason Rudolph. You don't judge Big Ben's value based off who his backup is, right? Because like Drew Brees is awesome. He's not less awesome just because they had Teddy Bridgewater, who's a good backup, the best backup in the league last year, and they went 5-0 without him.
Yeah.
Right? You don't think Drew Brees, you don't think less of Brees because of that, I don't think. Now, if his backup was Duck last year, the Saints probably go 1-4 during that time, and that doesn't change Brees' value. It changes the value of who the backup is.
Well, I think if anything, the fact that their record was as good as it was last year with that quarterback situation is the point, right? That shows you how good this team is.
Yes.
Regardless of the quarterback.
That would be the way to view it.
Right. This is a team that's capable of getting to 500 with the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. Therefore, that should temper how good you think Roethlisberger is if they're currently undefeated, as they are.
We love you, passionate Steelers fans. You're going to win by a lot against.
So anyway, yeah, they're going to win. They're going to beat Jacksonville, and they're probably going to cover 10, right?
Jags might hang tough, but yeah, the upset juice. They left it in Green Bay. The upset juice. Pittsburgh. All right, fascinating one. Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. Tamus. How much Tamus? How much Tay and how much Muss?
Well, oh God. Here's the thing. You are using Tamus as a combination of Jameis and Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
I would use the term Tamus to describe the performance of Jameis Winston when he came in for Drew Brees. Flamus Winston was tamed and became just a crappier version of Drew Brees. His average depth of target was pitiful. It was 6 yards downfield, which I mean,
that's the Saints offense. That's what they're used
to.
But
if you include nullified plays, it was like 4. His 30% of his passes were beyond the sticks. So it was Drew Brees again, right? So this idea that
Drew Brees with an elongated motion that's not getting the ball out there quick enough for the yak.
This idea that Jameis Winston is going to come in and bring this aggressive, deep downfield, threat that this offense has been missing, and become, suddenly set the offense going to catch fire and look amazing. At least through that game, that did not happen. And in fact, what happened was the Saints have shown a way to neuter Jameis Winston in a way the Bucs never did.
Listen, can we add some context to this, please?
No.
They're playing Nick Mullins and the San Francisco 49ers. They had a lead.
All right.
All they needed to do was sit on the lead last week, right? That's a lot different than
So you think that in this game, we get old school Flamus Winston with 11 yards per attempt?
I think you have to give Sean Payton some level of credit, right? It is fascinating because last year when Brees went down, Teddy Bridgewater replaced him, and they are similar styled quarterbacks.
Stylistically.
Right? Short game, get rid of the ball, yak heavy, safe, don't turn it over, all that stuff, right? Jameis is quite literally the opposite.
Yes.
Right? So if Sean Payton is smart, and I think he is, he's going to look at the skill set that he has and say, guess what? I can actually call, like, you like to talk about the plays in the playbook. They've been using this much of the playbook, right?
It's an audio medium, Steve.
The up to 15 yards playbook. They're going to open up they're going to dust it off, a whole second half of the playbook where Jameis can start stretching the field. And yeah, they don't have speedsters. Devontae Harris, they'll take a few shot plays with him. They've got, Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, and Alvin Kamara.
We need to lose this narrative that they don't have. They have speed. Harris is fast. Traquan Smith is fast. Emmanuel Sanders is not slow. They have Michael Thomas isn't slow. His numbers.
Okay, so they have downfield playmakers. They're going to use them. Jameis is going to chuck it down the field. They might put up 40 against the Falcons. Now, he also might turn it over a few times. That's fine. I think he's going to play to that skill set.
What if Sean Payton instead looks at Jameis Winston and says, you know what, this guy is a pretty good quarterback who just makes too many freaking mistakes. What we need to do is to take those mistakes out of his game, and the way to do that is to give him small, underneath, simple passes, throw it to Alvin Kamara, let him make some magic happen after the catch, just the way we've been doing it with Drew Brees and Teddy Bridgewater over the last couple of years.
He could do that. I think he's smarter than stacking up those 3 quarterbacks and saying Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater, Jameis Winston, and thinking, oh, yeah, Spider-Man meme. They're all the same guy. Let's treat them the same. I think he knows to treat them differently. Now, again, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets conservative and says, we've put up points with Drew Brees' noodle arm and Kamara after the catch and the short passing game. We've put up points. We've had success. I could see him maybe thinking that. But if he does that, right, if it's conservative first and second down, then they're going full Tay-mus. then every third down in less than four or less is all Taysom Hill. And I think we're talking like legit 2 quarterback system here.
No, see, that's the thing. Again, right, last year, everyone was like, oh, this is the chance to unleash Taysom Hill. Now that they're stuck with Teddy Bridgewater.
I know.
They used him less when Teddy was the quarterback than they did when Breeze was the quarterback.
You got to protect the franchise. You can't just throw him out there all the time.
And that was before Taysom Hill had a $16 million contract. Like, when are they going to use this guy?
Well, here's a question. Did they sign Jameis Winston just because he was a bargain, good backup quarterback, or because they legitimately see something in him for next year when Drew Brees is gone? Do they have to actually see what they have in him and see if he's the guy going forward? Because what are the Saints going to do at quarterback going forward? Jameis is a free agent at the end of the year. Do they actually build around Taysom Hill, or is it a Sam Darnold reclamation project or whatever it might be? And I think it's got to be it's a test run for Jameis as well.
There's not a goddamn hope in hell that Taysom Hill is the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints in 2021. Just isn't. Not going to happen. I don't care if Jameis comes out here and plays like the worst football in the world.
Well, they're not tied to him
for the next 3 weeks. Jameis is gone. They'll find somebody else, and Taysom Hill is going to stay Taysom Hill.
The Falcons have been sneaky decent the last few weeks. The defense is still not great. Another reason why I think you let Jameis kind of air it out a little bit in this one. But Matt Ryan's playing some, again, sneaky good football, playing much better in recent weeks. Atlanta plays 5 outdoor games the entire season, so they're well protected. I think it's going to be a decent matchup. I still like New Orleans. I like the old Ewing factor. You know, when you lose your best player, everybody else steps up. The Saints were already doing that. The Saints defense 2 weeks ago against the Bucs, last week against the 49ers after the first 2 drives, they stepped up, and I think the Saints defense, they make a little second half statement here with no Drew Brees.
We need to start naming our theories. The Ewing theory is a good one.
Ewing theory is good.
It works because it's named. We need to actually start naming our theories.
We have a ginger theory.
Yeah. But we need we named one years ago. This might even predate you. Remember Dominic Hickson, New York Giants receiver? Yeah. So it was called Dominic Hickson syndrome, right? Where he couldn't catch a ball coming in over his shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
Always had to turn around and grab it coming out of the sky. So that was Dominic. We had Christian Ponder syndrome.
You create syndromes rather than theories.
It's true.
That's the thing. You have Christian Ponder syndrome, where you think you have college. You think your college level athleticism is good enough at the NFL level.
Yeah, and you never learn that it isn't. So you escape pockets and you just keep running into open field that you think is like, I'm going to keep running and pick up 8 here.
Forgetting that the 280 pounders faster than you.
Then you get run down by a 300-pound defensive lineman that actually outruns you in the 40.
Well, yeah, we need more naming.
Yeah.
I named big time throws and turnover worthy plays.
You need to name less things.
Famous. I'm famous for that. Not as famous as Jameis, though. He's going to pull out the win.
He is.
Saints. Saints by 5 here.
I mean, he should, right? Like, the Saints are a good team. They don't become a bad team just because Drew Brees hasn't been playing that well.
Don't forget, this was the exploding whale game last year.
Yeah.
Atlanta at New Orleans.
That's a theory.
Exploding whale theory. Atlanta at New Orleans. Drew Brees took 6 sacks and they scored 9 points. That doesn't happen. Shouldn't happen. So weird stuff happens in division games.
Happen with Jameis.
Watch out. Oh, it could happen this week.
Saints win.
I agree, but I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta pulls this one off.
Stop it.
This is huge, man. New Orleans is 7-2. They have a half-game lead over the Bucs, but they really have a bigger lead because they beat them twice. But if Drew Brees is going to make a Super Bowl run, it's in Jameis's hands now to kind of hold on to that number 1
Who would you rather have your destiny in the hands of than Jameis Winston?
What if he tears it up and he's the guy down the stretch? Like, sorry, Drew.
There's no way. Literally no way they would bench Drew Brees. Not going to happen.
Let's see what Jameis does. All right, rapid fire now because it's Cincinnati Bengals at the Washington football team. Cincinnati's going to win. They're going to pull the upset. They're 1.5-point underdogs. My Bengals take will be good a week later.
You've been wrong about the Bengals a lot now.
Yeah, I'm just letting my heart go.
Turns out not only did they not win outright against the Pittsburgh, they were in fact blowoutable as well. They got blown
twice. They're blowoutable.
Out.
Times I said they weren't. Yeah,
out a lot.
I've been blinded by hometown blinders here in the Cincinnati area.
The Bengals need to stop throwing the ball at AJ Green. Joe Burrow's passer rating when he targets AJ Green is like 55. It's over 100 when he targets people that are not AJ Green at wide receiver. Like AJ Green is doing him harm more than he's helping at the moment, which was actually the opposite of what we thought would happen. You know, you keep him around for one more year, you smooth the transition to Joe Burrow, you help the rookie out a bit. Turns out, like, throwing the ball in Green's direction is harmful at the moment. Like, forget it. Take those targets, throw them at T. Higgins instead. Somebody that's more useful than that. Anybody. Mike Thomas, the other one, is providing more use to this offense right now than A.J. Green is.
Do you think A.J.'s banged up or lost it?
I think he's lost it. I mean, he's come back from injury, and he isn't. He feels like a guy that's struggling to learn what his body is capable of anymore. And the answer to that is not much, right? And he just hasn't caught up yet to that.
Yeah. And
I don't even know if that is something you catch up to, or if by the time you've caught up to it, the league is finished with you and you're out.
He's a free agent right now, AJ Green. I'm curious if teams look at him and said he is done versus reclamation project. Can he?
I mean, I don't think the guy that he used to be is coming back. At which point the question is, can his mind catch up to what he is now, and that become a useful?
He's got to become Larry Fitzgerald, uber possession
And the
guy.
thing is, Larry was able to sort of do that in real time. It's like the Peyton Manning thing, right? Can you rewire your brain in real time alongside your physical decline? And if you can, there's like this second career for you at the end. If you can't, you're basically just done and out of the league.
A better proxy might be, though, the Marcus Colston big slot guy.
Yeah.
Because Fitz did a little bit of that. He did that in Arians offense. He was the big slot. Maybe A.J. Green becomes a big slot in, the latter part of his career here.
This might be Alex Smith be looking really good as well because, again, Bengals.
Against the Bengals. I'm still going to take our hometown Bengals to win and cover that 1.5 point spread.
I am going to take Alex Smith.
There you go.
I'm the comeback player of the year.
The football team. The Miami Dolphins at the Denver Broncos. Tua against Locke. Locke coming off a disastrous outing, throwing the ball to the opposing team. Denver always plays tough. Weird stuff happens in Miami, and weird stuff happens in Denver. And here they are, playing against each other. Can the Miami Dolphins keep it going? That secondary against the Denver receivers will be a fun little matchup.
It will. But I suspect it might look a lot like what happened last week, which is Jerry Jeudy just cantering wide open at all times and Drew Lock burying the ball into the dirt at his feet. This Miami defense, period, is really impressive. And not just personnel-wise, but scheme-wise, it's doing smart things. It looks like an old-school New England Patriots defense. And we saw what it did to Justin Herbert, who's been carving up these looks all season long. It made him look like a rookie for the first time. This is what New England used to do for years, right? Young rookie quarterback goes to face a Bill Belichick defense. Good night. Forget it. It's not happening. This is what Miami under Brian Flores is starting to look like. And you're facing Drew Lock, who isn't a rookie, but is playing like one. So, night. Forget it.
It's interesting looking at their defensive coverage concepts. A lot of cover one and a lot of cover three. Those cousins of each other at single high. You're going to morph back and forth between the two. The Dolphins are running both at an extremely high level. There's really not a lot of teams running half cover one man like teams had been doing in the past. Lions are leading the league at 42%. So the Dolphins are playing to their personnel and making a ton of plays on the back end. I like the Dolphins.
Is there a scenario in which you, if you're Denver, sit down Drew Lock at any point this season?
So I think he's banged up this week anyway. Is that right?
I mean, voluntarily.
No, I don't see the benefit. I think you just get...
The benefit is actually bringing on the young players you have elsewhere in the team. So the Jerry Judys, the KJ Hamlers of the world, like you
think Brett Rippon, say, does a better job of distributing to them?
Yeah. Their development right now is being harmed by Drew Lock.
That's not really.
It is.
Your job is to run routes and get open. And like you said, if Judy's doing that every single week, whether somebody throws the ball to him or not, I don't think his development's getting hindered by having a few more targets.
You need to also, make some plays somewhere down the line.
Good?
You heard Steve Smith tell you all about how if you're just out there running, doing nothing, like the first ball that comes your way, you become like a gibbering mess. Anyway, Miami win. Denver don't. Next.
Where's my spreadsheet? What is next?
Doesn't matter. The game's not played on spreadsheets, Steve.
I'm rattled.
Next is New York
Jets. The podcast
Jets
is played on spreadsheets.
Against the Los Angeles Chargers.
All right, let's look up Clemson.
Chargers are favored by 8.5 against the Jets.
Do you have that Chargers stat off the top of your head?
What was the stat?
Losing by more than a score.
The teams
that have not lost
three
by more
teams
than a
that
score.
haven't lost by more than a score. One of them is the Steelers.
The Chiefs,
And one of them is the Chiefs.
the Steelers,
One of them is the Chargers.
and the Chargers, who are 2-7. That is maybe the best stat I've ever seen. In my life. Clemson at Florida State this Saturday at noon. Trevor Lawrence coming back from COVID.
Coming back.
Yeah. See how rusty he is. Anyway.
So Dan Orlovsky is a big Sam Darnold fan. Jordan Palmer on their podcast, on the 2-for-1 podcast featuring Austin Gale and young Michael Renner, apparently said that Sam Darnold is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL.
Jordan Palmer said that.
Yes. What is it with Sam Darnold and leading these crazy lunatic quarterback whispering people in the wrong direction?
Jordan Palmer coaches Sam Darnold.
And you think that that's swaying his interpretation of how Sam Darnold is playing?
I'm not saying that Jordan Palmer would ever be biased toward the guys that he
Sounds
coaches.
a lot like that's what you're saying.
No, he absolutely would.
Oh, okay.
Everything he says is biased. He thought Kyle Allen was the next big thing. True story, though. Jordan Palmer has liked Sam Darnold since Elite 11. I was in the room, Sam.
Okay.
Back at Elite 11.
What the hell is Elite 11 for the people that don't know?
Elite 11. It's all the best high school quarterbacks across the country. And there's like 18 of them. They show up and they have
not 11 of
contests.
them.
They have contests throughout the year, and you try to see who's going to win Elite 11.
How come this country can't name things with the right number that is in the thing?
Oh no! So you have 18
Big 12,
battling.
Big 10.
Listen,
Elite
you have
11.
18 battling to become one of the Elite 11. So they bring 18 to the finals,
It's like elimination.
and then they rank the top 11.
Okay. All right.
So,
All right,
for
that's
instance,
less stupid than the
and
Big
we were out
10.
there grading, and it was the year that Kyler Murray was out there, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold. Now, not Shane Buechele that year, but anyway, there's a bunch of guys,
All right.
right? They were all in the same class, and he loved Sam Darnold. Darnold had never played 7-on-7, so he's just getting his feel for like how to even just run 7-on-7 and all. He just loved Sam. And then after that draft class, Jordan Palmer trained Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, and Kyle Allen. And if you listened to a Jordan Palmer interview, go check out the 2-for-1 drafts. I will very boldly say he is far more positive than negative about the guys that he has coached. And all these guys do. George Whitfield did it the year that he was coaching Johnny Manziel, and he wasn't coaching Teddy Bridgewater. Tell us about Johnny. Oh, he's a playmaker, baller, just gets stuff done. Teddy Bridgewater, what's he? I just kind of distributes a little bit. Of course they're biased. It's the guys that they coach.
All right. So Jordan Palmer makes sense. It's Dan Orlovsky that's a little bit crazy.
He's always been a Darnold believer, and he's blamed everything else
To be
around
fair,
him.
it's a crappy situation.
He's not wrong.
On the other hand, he looked worse than Joe Flacco running the same offense.
For like a game. Flacco's been good for a game. Other than that, he's been
good. He just looked better.
He's been a train wreck too, though.
I mean, I'm not.
I would say with Darnold,
Flacco's not good, but he's looked better than Darnold.
I missed on Darnold too. I thought he did. I was blinded by some awesome things that he did. And at USC that all came as a redshirt freshman.
Don't bail on it. Don't bail on it. Stick to this fact that Darnold, in the right situation, can turn it around. Like
I keep thinking about him with the Saints.
He's an intrigue. Yes, he's an intrigue. Not just the Saints. Look at the number of teams. Everybody that's rolling the dice on the geriatric quarterback right now. New Orleans, Indianapolis, Tampa Bay. All of these teams are in the market for a Sam Darnold when they draft Trevor Lawrence and kick that guy out of the door. He'll still only be 24 years old. He's like a perfect reclamation project.
Okay, yeah, so I don't want to say I completely missed on Sam Darnold. I missed on what my expectations were, that he was really good, short, intermediate level. He had really good anticipation and short area accuracy. He needed to work on the deep ball. And if there's one thing that you can handle working on at the NFL level, it's just chucking it down the field, because your results are so much driven by your situation. Now, he's never had a good situation, right? But you at least wanted to see more positives, just more positive things come out of Sam Darnold to this point. Anyway, Chargers by 8.5 for a team that has not been beaten by.
He's not even playing this week, so we're just wasting time at this point.
No, I don't. Why'd you bring up Sam Darnold?
I don't.
And
remember.
Jordan Palmer. And why'd you make me call out Jordan? I've now called out Steve Smith and poor Jordan.
Well, at this point, I'm just trying to get you in trouble.
I forgot to get you fired up about stuff on the show.
I do think it's interesting, though, to see if Joe Flacco can have a second game, because the thing that's different with the Jets is all these receivers are getting healthy. Like Denzel Mims is back. Jamison Crowder is back. Brashad Perriman. Like, they're all on the field at the same time for the first time all season long. Let's see if they can actually get some offense going against the Chargers defense that hasn't been great. And then the other side of the ball, let's see if Greg Williams and his defense can confuse the newly shorn Justin Herbert in the same way that the Miami Dolphins are able to.
I was typing. I wasn't listening to you.
Okay. I was saying, let's see if Greg Williams can confuse the newly shorn Justin Herbert.
Oh, there's a matchup to watch. I like that.
Yeah, in the same way the Dolphins were able to.
All right, yeah. That'll be a fun one. I expect Herbert to bounce back, though.
You do?
And look pretty good against this Jets D. Jets will keep it close enough, though. 8.5 is huge for the Chargers, a team that just, Jets are going to cover.
Speaking of like crazy wide spreads, the Minnesota Vikings are 7-point favorites.
Just stop, Sam. I've told you all season they're pretty good. Justin Jefferson is uncoverable. Uncoverable.
Okay.
The Bengals, well, unblowoutable, uncoverable. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins against this Dallas defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vikings by 7. Not crazy.
The Vikings defense is still not good.
They've played so much better in recent weeks.
Because they faced the Bears.
Yeah. They're playing so much better. They're playing they're crowding the line, sugar the A gaps, drop out. They're doing all the Zimmer stuff.
Yeah.
And they're capable. Zimmer's defense, he does a good job of raising their baseline. And early in the season, yeah, they were bad, but he's raised their baseline.
They're still bad. Like the cornerbacks still can't really cover anybody.
That doesn't matter.
It kind of does.
They got some safeties. Harrison
The
Smith.
defensive line
Antonio
can't really rush the passer yet.
Anthony Harris.
They're basically bad at all the things a defense needs to do.
No, you're just...
They can't rush the passer or stop the pass.
You're so bitter. Where's their coverage grade now? Look at this.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up. 16th.
16th.
16th in coverage grade. Where were they early in the season?
That's where you're hanging your hat on.
Yes, because look at
that
what they've done
includes
recently.
like the good play from the safeties and the linebackers. Like the corners, the guys that actually need to cover the wide receivers most of the time. And by the way, they're facing the Dallas wide receivers who are, really quite good.
Dalton throwing the ball to them. Last 3 games in the green from a coverage standpoint. Vikings turned the corner. That was against the Packers, the Lions, and the Bears.
So you are taking the Vikings to cover a 7-point spread.
I'm just saying it's not a crazy spread based off what we've seen in recent weeks with what they're able to do offensively.
Isn't it?
They beat the Packers by 6.
Yeah.
On the road.
They're running the ball all over.
They beat the Lions by 14, and they beat the Bears by 6. Couldn't get Dalvin going, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just driving him right into a wall of Bears defenders.
Even when Akeem Hicks went out.
But against this Dallas defensive front, you pick and choose how you want to move the ball against the Cowboys. You can either blow the tackles off the ball, or pick them apart.
Like Dallas aren't good either, which is helpful for your cause.
Yes, that's how spreads work.
But my point is the Vikings aren't good either.
Both teams.
But the Vikings also are not good.
Oh my gosh. Just come off your first 4-week take and look at the Vikings who are now in the playoff picture. Playoff picture.
The hunt.
Minnesota Vikings.
They're not getting anywhere near the playoffs.
They win, they don't cover though.
They win, they don't cover.
Yes.
Okay.
Dallas keeps it within 7.
I think that's probably true, and I think it's a close game all the way, and therefore the spread is wrong.
Okay. But it's just not crazy based off what we saw. Dallas has given up 290 points this year. That's more than anybody in the NFC. It's not close. That's why. That's why it's 7. And they're just coming off their bye. It's more than anybody in the NFL. Good?
Yeah, we got one more game, right?
One more game. Detroit Lions at the Carolina Panthers. Panthers have lost 5 straight after being, better than... Since I called them overachievers.
They have ceased to overachieve.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what they were. The fact that they started, 3-3? It's a minor miracle given this roster. They have a lot of, given the defensive roster at least. Again, I think the offense, Joe Brady play calling, there's a lot to be optimistic about. How's Teddy's status looking here? Got all banged up last week.
This is a 3-7 team against a 4-5 team, and it feels like it. You know what I mean? As a game, It feels like an encounter between two teams that are under 500.
Yeah, and the difference is I think Detroit had higher expectations from myself and others. Carolina had 0 expectations, and they both landed in pretty much the same spot. Teddy, limited capacity. He did practice a little bit on Wednesday. We'll see if he ends up going. Obviously, his ability to play versus P.J. Walker is going to be a big factor here.
No McCaffrey. P.J. Walker of XFL fame. And XFL on his way to being the XFL MVP before the league shut down for COVID. And for some reason, people think he's good.
You are so biased. It's unbelievable.
How am I biased? He's not good.
Because a couple weeks ago,
I will bet you any volume of money right now that PJ
because
Walker
a couple
comes out
weeks
of this
ago,
game
you're
with a
on
bad
here.
grade.
Put some respect on Garrett Gilbert, AAF.
He's actually was pretty good. He wasn't even PJ Walker wasn't
AAF
even grading well.
MVP.
He wasn't even grading well in the XFL.
AAF MVP Garrett Gilbert. Put some respect on his name, and then the XFL MVP you disrespect
because one of them actually
you're still
graded
hanging on
and
to
played well in that league. The other one didn't. Was just making a couple of spectacular plays, so people thought he was amazing. Also, the first guy played well in college, not the pros. The second guy didn't even play well in college. At no point in his career has he played well.
Pronouns, pal. You got to use the proper. No
Mr.
pronouns. Use names.
PJ Walker at no point in his football playing life has played well. Mr. Garrett Gilbert in almost all play of his NFL or of his football playing career has played well, just not at the highest level in the NFL starting.
Finally got you a little fired up.
Therefore, there is a marked difference between the two players, even though you can point to them and say, all right, if we limit it to just the fact that they were the presumptive MVP of their respective defunct leagues, they are the same human. Outside of that, they're dramatically different, which is why my outlook for them is dramatically different.
So if the Carolina is favored by 1.5, as of right now, what happens if PJ plays?
They're not favored and not winning.
Okay. Detroit has Marvin Jones, TJ Hawkinson, Kenny Golladay, and Matthew Stafford, who did hit his thumb while throwing a pass last week, a little banged up, and Danny Amendola. So all the playmakers are all questionable. Stafford's questionable. Everything to hang your hat on for Detroit is questionable. We'll see what happens with these guys here. Detroit's been a little disappointing, though. The reason why I like them was all those playmakers I just listed, plus Stafford, plus I thought they added enough volume in the secondary, including the benched rookie Jeffrey Okudah. I thought that they had enough volume there to at least get by, and I think everything's gone sour. It's all been bad for the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, they're maybe the team hurt most by this weird pivot of 2020 NFL to like nobody has any defense. Like nobody can cover, nobody can stop the pass. Offenses are everything. They're setting records in yards, points, everything. Offense is everything. The Lions were supposed to be markedly better because they improved to stop the pass, none of which matters.
Yeah.
And they had to step back of their own passing attack. So
you have to at least try, though. You try with volume, and yeah, you have to lean on who you're playing. You're dependent on who you're playing, but you still have to at least make life more difficult for opposing offenses. And the Lions are still, as I said earlier, running more man than anybody else and not covering well. They're trying to adjust. It just hasn't gone well. I like the Lions though because they're still better than the Panthers.
Particularly
if all those guys play.
PJ's playing.
Yeah, I mean, if at least a few of those playmakers play for the Lions and Stafford, I like the Lions in this one.
No McCaffrey as well. Yeah, the Lions should win, to be honest.
All right. Well, that'll do it. Week 11 preview. By the way, go check out the Chris Collinsworth podcast. Him and Richard Sherman still going every single week and having some awesome football and non-football discussions. So go check it out, Chris Collinsworth podcast. Part of the PFF podcast network here, Sam, of which we anchor. We're the anchors, right?
Yes.
Number one podcast on PFF.
Sure.
I think it's us. Millions and millions of listeners. We thank you all for listening every single week. So check us out. We'll be back Monday morning reviewing all the Week 11 action. You guys enjoy. This week, it's playoff time. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. A lot of excitement. So enjoy your weekend. See you Monday morning.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.